Backed by popular demand, the old school Las Vegas reunion returns with Reunion 2021 with a fresh new venue, Rockstar Bar. Brought to you by the legendary duo of DJ Frankie and R.O.B.s. Friday, August 20th at 6730 South Las Vegas Boulevard across from Town Square. 9 p.m. to 2 a.m.
This is how we do it.
Pre-sale tickets only $10 on Eventbrite or at the door before 10 p.m. Indoor-outdoor dance party with food and drink specials and the lowest bottle prices on the Strip. Reunion 2021, Friday, August 20th at Rockstar Bar. See you there.
There it is. Reunion 2021 is 1 week away.
Oh, yeah.
And as you know, we've been promoting it 4 weeks in a row with DJ R.O.B. Presents Taking It Back. First and foremost, thanks everybody who watched episodes 1, 2, and 3. I got a lot of phone calls. I got a lot of comments. I already got people joining us right now. What's up, Jennifer? I'm going to try to do something different today so that we can get to the comments and get some of those questions answered from the previous episode. So, once again, Reunion 2021 is 1 week away. Rockstar Bar, Las Vegas Boulevard, right across from Town Square. Great parking, free, ample parking, great drink prices. We'll talk about that later. But like I said, we're going to do something different. Still have my guest, DJ Frankie. But I'm doing these episodes, I'm producing, I'm throwing the media up, the photos, the videos, the audio, the camera switching. So I do miss out on some of the comments. And so tonight we have a special guest moderator. We go way back like an A-track in a Cadillac with the seats back. Some of you guys know him as Willie G. Ramirez. And a lot of you know him as the old school friend of ours, Willie Will. He is going to guest moderate. So without further ado, here is my man, Willie Will.
DJ Frankie, DJ Rob, man, I really appreciate it. And when I found out that you were doing this, especially for the fact that I had deactivated Facebook for a while, you were like, man, you got to reactivate it. You got to watch it. So I promised Rob when I would be up early between 3 and 4, either doing cardio or doing some writing, I would put it on in the background and listen. And I'm telling you right now, the enthusiasm that is brought forth when you're listening to the stories and the old school joints and just the town itself. Forget about talking about That's Entertainment or the skating rink or Tramps or Shark or whatever it may have been. It automatically, you just start envisioning Las Vegas when Flamingo stopped at the 15 and you couldn't go any further. You get between Caesars and Dunes and you're making a choice. And it just brings the enthusiasm back to a time when I think we can all agree that Las Vegas was at its finest. And the enthusiasm for this reunion, I really do believe, and I've been to several of them, I think this is gearing up to be the best reunion you guys have ever had. If anybody misses this one, they're really going to kick themselves simply for the fact that you've built this up for 3 weeks. The YouTubes, the comments, the love that everybody has had in these last 3 weeks has been phenomenal. And this will be, without a doubt, the show to be at, the reunion to be at.
For sure. For sure.
Thank you, Willie Will, for joining us and helping us out. Like I said previously, he's a nationally recognized journalist and reporter. And he's actually done stories on me and Frankie together and individually throughout the last 30 years. As you can see, this article right here is from December of 1991, so that's exactly 30 years ago. He did an article on me in the Southwest View, the Review Journal, and tons of other media publications. So once again, thanks to Willie Will for always following us, writing about us when he gets a chance, and now he's moderating the Facebook Live tonight.
Well, and let's just get started, jump right into it head first. Because one of the things that stood out to me in watching and listening, I actually watched 2 of the 3 and I listened to all 3. So I've duplicated in making long drives out to the Raiders facility. So really one of the things that I'd like for you to elaborate on that I'm not sure that, how many people actually commented on this, because so many people want to comment about, the old school, the JC Park, the Bomb Squad, the this, that. But the turning point that somewhat brought an end to the old school vibe in Las Vegas that we loved so much. There was a point where Las Vegas nightlife just kept going, but the old school vibe that we always loved, it came to an end. What happened?
Well, I think that a big part of that was the bottle service and squeezing everybody for every dime they could spend, rather than making the party come first. And ironically, I still believe that the party was great when Studio 54 opened, Raw, Rain. I still believe at those very beginning years it was still fun, and it was still run like a mom and pop nightclub. They weren't gouging you at the door for $60, $100 entry fees. It was $10 and $20. The drinks, especially at 54, were a full ounce and a half. They were big drinks. You remember that, Rob? The big drinks at 54. So I personally think that it changed in 2006. I can't blame it completely on hotel, casino, nightlife, because from 97 to 2006, I think it was great. It was an extension of all the great things you talked about, from J.C. Park to Tramps and Shark, and it just happened to be in a hotel. It was great. But after 2006, the bottle service became mandatory rather than a choice. You had to get a table or forget it. And if you went to the bathroom and you weren't sitting at a table, some clubs wouldn't even let you back in. So in my opinion, it changed in 2006 over greed. Money came before the party. And
you have that. You mentioned the hotel, and obviously that bleeds into the evolution of the Las Vegas nightclub, because that's where we saw, a lot of those open space. I think the biggest nightclubs we saw before a hotel nightclub was Shark and Mets and the Palladium, and then all of a sudden the hotel nightclubs became these big. And would you say that also ushering in was, at the time, I believe in '89, the Mirage is when Las Vegas turned into somewhat of a resort city that's credited with being the first resort. That's somewhat, I get what you're saying, the evolution and the end of the old school Vegas vibe, but did the Mirage and that '87 resort feel somewhat contribute to where we started seeing everything starting to change, not necessarily the evolution had taken place?
Well, I do think that because the resort was such a big thing now, it wasn't just a hotel with brass railings and the rooms looked the same. They went above and beyond. The Mirage was beautiful when they first opened. I think it's shifted, like Rob said many times, more to tourists than locals. And that was a big thing as well, because when you're on vacation, you're ready to spend more money. So the prices started going from $8, $9 a drink to $14 and $18 a drink. And I remember when that was a big deal. Now we
used to hear it from our local friends. We were working at some of these hotel clubs, and they really felt alienated. They were getting bum rushed at the door. Oh, you want to buy a bottle, you want to get a table. There's really no general admission tonight, so you either got to buy a bottle or there's a minimum, and there's a table over here. And the tourists, like you said, they're willing and able to spend the money, or they got their parents' credit card, whatever. And I actually witnessed it by DJing through these evolutions, that the locals steered away and the tourists enveloped all these clubs, and that's the turning point. It did coincide. It took a few years, but it really did push people away local-wise.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you talk about the hotels, and we had you had the Raw, the Rum Jungle, Studio 54, Rain. You had all these hotel nightclubs. And if you don't mind, I brought a trivia question with me because you guys have been doing giveaways, ticket giveaways. So I actually brought a trivia question. If you don't mind me, let me throw it out to your viewers.
Hold on. We're going to do a ticket giveaway?
Let's do a ticket giveaway, because I do have something for the followers tonight. So I'm guessing that the old schoolers might come up with two answers, but there really is only one true answer to this. Everybody out there in Facebook land. And one of them that you may come up with, all three of us happen to DJ at one time, but that's not the answer. So we're not going to give that
not
spoiler
a nightclub.
away.
It was a bar, lounge where they had some DJs.
Which was kind of badass back then. But what was the first official hotel nightclub in Las Vegas? The first official hotel nightclub in Las Vegas? Hotel.
I'm looking at the comments right now.
Inn.
If your girl starts acting up, then you take her friend.
Oh, yeah. Okay. The first official hotel nightclub in Las Vegas, Rob, has...
it takes about 20 seconds for the interwebs to go all across the world and back down. So the people are probably typing their comments right now.
We learned that by mistake a week or two ago.
Karen, Karen, she got it right. Rio.
That is absolutely
Rio
correct.
Is a hotel, Club Rio is a club.
Wow.
So back then, there was the Rio had the Voodoo Lounge, and then all of a sudden they turned their showroom into Club Rio, and that is The very
the
first.
correct answer.
Now, the most common one, I don't know if you, now I do a lot of sports talk radio on ESPN Las Vegas, and I always throw that out there, you know, every so often, every few months, because you know you don't want redundancy, but I always get the answer. The most people will guess Studio 54. They think that was the first one. But
I'm glad, but there's a difference. Studio 54 was the first hotel nightclub on the Strip.
Let's talk about the hotel histories
on the Strip.
The history of hotel nightclubs.
So here it goes. The first place that had DJ culture, not a band, not a lounge on the first floor, was the Landmark. They had the top of the Landmark, and it was a lounge and a bar, and there was
which, excuse me, by the way, was the place I was talking about.
Oh, sure, that we all spun at.
That we all spun at, yeah.
And that was DJ Phil and Paulie held down a residency probably longer than most people who were up there, but that was the first lounge in the city to do DJs rather than bands. So that was that. Studio 54 was the first to be on the Strip in a major nightclub, and absolutely not to put down the Rio at all. We loved the Rio. We went there, and I give the Wanells great credit for being the first for so many things. Great restaurants, beautiful style that Wynn capitalized on. But that was a showroom first. It was a showroom that they used to deliver food to the table. So the center of the dance floor would come up, and people would run out with plates, and those plates weren't real. But at the same time, the real servers were coming out of the kitchen serving the tables. So that was a cool part of the show that was surrounded around food. But at the end of the show, they ended up doing the nightclub in the same room, so the tables were high. It still looked like a showroom rather than a nightclub.
Yeah.
Didn't have bathrooms inside of it, but it did have a great big dance floor and good DJs, and they get the props and the credit for being the first one in a hotel. But the first one on the Strip was Studio 54, and that's why they make that mistake.
And you know what's funny is I remember that was when that opened, and that was when I really started my journalism career. My first published article was ever in 1987 on a good friend of a good friend of all of ours, Mark Wade, the point guard from the second Final Four team of the Running Rebels, in the Sentinel Voice, which you just featured on there. Shout out to Willis and Lee Strother. But that's when I really started getting my journalism career going, because I would remember on fight weekends, two nationally acclaimed boxing writers, actually world-renowned, Wally Matthews from New York and John Saraceno with USA Today. We would go out, we'd hit Plating and Sam's when it was still a jazz bar, and we'd go to Club Rio, because that was the club, because that was the only hotel nightclub. So that's where we would go. So I remember that. Now there's another history.
I want to mention a year to that, though, because people don't know. It was January of 1990. So in case people are coming up with clubs that were in 96, 97, no. Rio was first, January 1990. Go ahead. Sorry to do that.
No problem. So there's another history that a lot of people don't understand or realize that took place. And the way that the people did this was what I remember, because I remember I was a part of one at the old Pamplemousse, but where the history of undergrounds and raves and after darks, and I remember there were restaurants where the owners were approached by promoters, such as yourself, Frankie, Rob, War and Peace, the old school guys. They go into these restaurants and say, what time do you shut down the kitchen? Well, we seat the last guest at 9. We don't take an order past 10. Kitchen's closed by 11. Well, these promoters would come in about 10:45. They'd clear the tables off to the perimeter. The dining room turned into the dance floor. And at midnight, they'd have a line outside. And the owner didn't mind, because the bars would make even more money. The promoter would get a little bit of that. The promoter would get a little bit of the bar money. The owner of the place would get a little bit of the door money, and everybody would be happy for an extra 4 hours of fun. The history of the undergrounds in this town. Reach out about a little bit about that.
You know, there was so many of them. The most popular ones that people are going to remember was White Chocolate and Ride. But I got to tell you, it started years ago with a place called Cosmos Underground downtown. It was a restaurant. I just got chills because we didn't even talk about that, and it just hit me now. It was called Cosmos Underground. It was downtown. It was an Italian restaurant. It was gay oriented. At first, and then straights infiltrated, and it became more mainstream. But it was gay oriented, and we used to eat down there. And the waiters would tell us about it. Hey, we do this after hours, and it was a cool place because it was like a cave. You went downstairs, and there was rock on the wall, so it looked like they actually dug out the basement into a cave.
Right.
But I'm sure they prefabricated it with all the rock look. But it was the first underground, and it was an after hours downtown. But the ones that became popular that led into what the nightlife scene turned into was White Chocolate and Ride. White chocolate, I think, started in the Cafe Michelle or something like
yes,
that.
Yes,
Yeah.
On Flamingo in Maryland.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's weird because those promoters reached out to me. I went there a few times and saw the DJ. Create was one of the DJs. And anyway, he started introducing me to Maurice. Maurice was the promoter of Ride.
Okay.
And if I remember it correctly, they started getting hassled that they didn't have promoters license and admissions licenses. And I don't know why. There was never any fights at those events. There was no drug dealing at those events. And so it was weird. But anyway, they came to me and said, Frank, we know you got those licenses. I said, yeah, let's do things together. And we did. The flyers that Rob's showing now, that one of... the pink one, whatever it was, right there. It's Ride Productions Presents. I was an actual DJ at these events with Create and War and Peace. My name on that was Dwa Cool. And it was Maurice's idea, the promoter. He said, Frank, you're so well known as DJ Frankie with the hip hop and the funk. I know you know every genre. Me and Rob talked about it a week or two ago. We play every genre. We did everything. But they said it was a better idea for me to change my name for these events. So I did. Now, this event right here, KUNV and the R.O.B.s Presents.
Bubby.
What had happened with that was Ivan was doing dances at Thomas and Mack Center. And when he has the dances there, he had it for 24 hours. And I approached him and said, what are you doing after your dance ends at 12 midnight or whatever? He was like, nothing. I said, let's do these. And we did. We started doing these events. And it was myself and Maurice from Ride and Create, DJ Create. Oh, this now right here, the biggest thing to happen at the town at the time was this rave called Desert Move. Now, this was brought to mine and Rob's attention from Mike Schiavo. Mike Schiavo said, Frank, somebody approached me with this thing. I think it's right up your alley, because we had 2655 at the time. We were doing underground promotions at 2655. That's the black and white thing you saw at first with the whatever, the numbers on it. But this particular thing called Desert Move, Mike Schiavo said to me, listen, do you think you could do something with that? I said, absolutely. So I got Jose Two Hype on a gigantic flyer team. He brought in Speedy, and Speedy was actually one of the DJs at it, and it took place in the middle of the desert where you took a bus from the Luxor Hotel, and it would bring you to the middle of the desert. Now, this was no small-time try at a rave event. It was real. You bought your tickets at Ticketmasters. You had the buses leaving right away every 15 minutes from the Luxor. You had... people from San Diego, LA, New York. It was hugely promoted throughout the East and the West Coast. And it was a huge success. Thousands of people in the middle of the desert. Nobody knows this, but one of the people who were behind it was Camel Cigarettes. And Camel Cigarettes, if you looked on the mountain, they had this laser, and it looked real quick like just red lights. But when you would turn your face away, it would be the Camel Pyramid with the camel in front of it. The Camel Cigarettes Pyramid with the camel in front of it. Anyway, it was great. This was Out of Order. Out of Order was 18 and over. And it was at 2655, the club that me and Rob did inside the commercial center. And I love the way the whole mentality of the underground scene showed you that they were going against the grain. Yeah. Even our logo at the time had 3 people walking in one direction and 1 person walking against it. And if you read it, it says, Out of Order. Inconveniently located at 2655 South Maryland Parkway alongside the Jackson Plaza. If you still can't find it, go home. And that's the kind of things that they did to promote this underground scene, to let you know you weren't part of the mainstream, you weren't normal. Right. As a matter of fact...
You remember 501?
501 was another event, which was Gino, who is now a partner in one of the world's most recognized clubs in Miami. It's called 11. We just were there last week.
You guys did the event. I DJ'd there, and Tony Morrison, I believe his last name Morrison, but he was the manager, and it had that cool retro look. I always used, people say, what do you mean retro? I said, it reminds me of like it was a splash out of the show I Dream of Jeannie. It had that awesome 60s look and everything. But I DJ'd there for quite some time, and that was down on Maryland, or Flamingo, just east of Maryland. So yeah, that was a cool little spot.
Yep, and that was one of Gino's clubs as well. And then we also did Utopia.
And a lot of these flyers, this is when I was getting into graphics. So some of these flyers you've seen, I started designing, like this one for Utopia.
Well, and you talk about like the graphics and doing that, and once computers came, but man, some of those original flyers, I remember some late nights. Frankie and I ended up at
just a magic
Kinko's,
marker and a piece of paper.
Well, we'd end up at Kinko's
for hours
at 2 a.m. I go pick up Frankie, and we go to when he down by Gorman High School. We jump in the car. We'd stop at the Jack in the Box, by the way, because he loved the sourdough burger. And we'd end up at Kinko's at 2 in the morning with the X-Acto knife and the glue stick, putting together little flyers and printing them. So I mean,
one of them was up there. It was a disco one with the feet hanging out.
Express?
Yeah, and that came from an album cover, and we would just put extra words there and cut them out and paste them, just like Willie said. But when Rob started getting into design, I stopped doing it. First of all, it was perfect timing because it was getting intricate, and Kinko's was now getting crowded even at late hours. And then they were telling you that this is the one that we actually made at Kinko's from an album cover. And nowadays they say to you, did you take this art from anywhere? You know, back then they didn't ask questions, and it wasn't a big deal. But once Rob started getting into the digital know-how of how to do it, that was it. Rob, make this flyer.
Yeah.
Boom.
One of the things you brought up, and it transitions into my next point, because you brought up DJ Ivan doing stuff at the Thomas and Mack. But, you know, I'll never forget when I first met them, Ivan and Diamond Dave, they had a studio over on Valley View, and they had they were doing power dances at the convention center. It was crazy because they sort of had taken over what you guys ushered in was the convention center, the hotel ballroom dances, and throwing them on for the teen club, because you sort of opened the door for that. And then because you guys had, at that point, had moved on to the Tramps and the Shark Clubs and doing the contest. Now, earlier in one of the episodes, you mentioned Ray Pratt as your biggest follower and supporter. He's been to every single event. The following, obviously, it remains big. You know, after you appeared at so many events and hotels here, started getting a reputation elsewhere. How big has that following actually reached on a national level? Because I can remember you two going to Lake Havasu long before there was such a thing as spring break at Lake Havasu.
Yeah, the first thing we did in Lake Havasu, I think, was 90 or 91. Oh, you say 89. I believe
it was 89.
Yeah,
before
we started DJing.
No.
Yeah.
You guys DJ'd before, but 89 and
yeah.
90, I believe, was when we went with Mini Mike and Greg Spin. Dean and I danced, because the only reason why I say this is because I remember working at Geo Nuts, spinning at Geo Nuts, and I was working there at the time. And then the next year we went back and I was at Fuddy's, and then you followed when Freeze cut his record and was on the national record label.
Right, Profile. So whether it was 88 to 91, in that area, we started out first with doing events in Havasu. But there was DJ accounts that Rob was spinning at in Havasu, and so
in
was...
87, we had some DJs out there that brought us out to do these clubs that were in hotels. And then we got this relationship with them. And then when we started getting the idea, it was actually the radio station when the girl called.
That's what happened.
Yeah. Tell them that story.
And we know, I told that story, didn't I? Or am I hallucinating? Okay. Well, anyway, what had happened was we had a mix show on Power 97. We had a ton of them. I could name them off later, all the mix shows we had on the different stations. But this one was on KYRK Power 97. And this girl called up and said, give a shout out to everybody here in Lake Havasu. We hear you guys all the time, and give us a shout out. So we did. And I said to Rob, you know, we know people there. Met R.O.B.s. We know DJ R.O.B.s from... R.O.B.s reminds me that I met him back in the day, and we're talking 1979 at the Armory. Yeah. And I was a DJ at the Armory. It was one of the first big things I ever did when I moved to this town. I was here just a short while, and I met Scooby, and I met Rabbit, and I met Smokey Jr. And so that was a big thing for me, because I'm friendly with those people still now, 43 years later. But anyway, this girl told us about Havasu. We said we already know DJs there. Let's go down there and make a deal. And we did. R.O.B.s got us in Who Songs.
R.I.P. Cindy.
And this is a picture of that right there in the Who Songs DJ booth.
This was our first appearance as far as us. That was
check that out.
Mike
That's
and
Spring Break of
Spring
1991.
Break of 91. Now that's way before MTV was doing this.
Yeah, no, I have this. Now Lake Havasu hosted MTV Spring Break Series starting in March '95. That's at least minimum 8 years before you guys, or 8 years after you debuted there.
Yeah.
It was reported that first MTV event. Now I want you to listen to this, Facebook. I want you to listen to this. 1995 MTV brought the Spring Break Series to Lake Havasu. It was reported that first MTV event brought an estimated $1.1 million to local revenue in Lake Havasu. Two people are responsible for that. The evolution of Spring Break started with Rob and Frankie bringing the electric atmosphere, the old school vibe that you all have enjoyed since '81, bringing it to Lake Havasu and them sort of just growing it, and now MTV shows up in 95, $1.1 million. It had to start somewhere, and it started with these two.
Well, thank you. And, I'm glad you bring that up because I'm going to tell you how we used to promote in those days, and this is no exaggeration. We actually went up and down the whole lake area. And if anybody knows Lake Havasu, they park those boats right next to each other. You can walk from one boat to the next. Yeah. And we went to every single boat and gave them a flyer. Now, if they just took it and shook their head yes, we walked on. But if they were ready to talk, what's this all about? Oh, it's at Who Songs. It's DJs from Vegas. And we're doing a big thing tonight. You got to come. Well, the line was huge. Everybody had those flyers in their hand. So when the club saw that, they were like, what did you guys do? Well, we did announce it on the radio show, of course, because we knew that our power went that far. We were received in Lake Havasu, which is actually Arizona, and we were broadcasting from Vegas. So we took advantage of mentioning it on the radio. However, going to each and every boat for 2 days before that and handing out everything, I really think did the trick because they had the flyers in their hand. And I think that opened up the eyes to all these club owners and hotel owners. Wow, we could do that too with posters and boats that have the big signs on them and this and that. And I will take the credit for that, me and Rob, for doing that, for bringing it there. So
no, that was, and it's funny you bring up the boat thing. Mm-hmm. I'll never forget in talking to Rob, in talking to Kev Rock, with when they were touring with Dino.
Yeah.
I remember just what they would say, what it was like showing up at the hotel and people waiting out front and so on and so forth. And it was like, wow, that must be really cool, right? So here we go for one day, one event, right? 2 shows, and the next day, R.O.B. had it set up and they had rows of boats, jet skis, and they had it roped off on the beach. And we pulled up and it was like rock stars. And here we are just, them two trying to break through with the Shark record label in one song. And Dean, right? Dean and I did dancing. And it was like we were Dino and Rob and Kev Rock on the New Kids in the Block tour, and it was just like one little spring break show inside of a nightclub. Not to downplay it, because I thought we brought a lot of enthusiasm to that town, but they really ate it up, and like I said before, those 8 years of climbing and ascending in that spring break scene is what now brings millions at that time. Why don't you guys elaborate on some of the other cities, because from there it just grew and grew and grew.
Yeah, we'll go into the other cities. You want to go? You want to take a word from our sponsor?
Nah, I don't feel like talking. You want to talk about the commercial? Let's go to the commercial. But when you talk about other cities, being respected and acknowledged in this town, and all of a sudden we're getting booked. People come to the clubs we're at and they say, hey, can you come to San Diego? Can you come to LA? Can you come to Atlantic City? Can you come to New York? I did Puerto Rico. We did the Bahamas together. We got
Bahamas, Hawaii.
We had a residency at the Bahamas. We had a residency in Hawaii.
A lot of the other
ones,
a lot of the other ones were just 1 or 2 times, or maybe once. But Hawaii and the Bahamas went on for a year or so.
Hawaii, I had fun in Hawaii, obviously.
Well, Rob always makes me laugh. It's hard to make me laugh, but my friends crack me up. And Rob, on this particular day, this outfit that he wore for the picture, he was wearing all day. And we were on the street, and he was screaming out to people, come to the Tiki Room for the magic show.
Did you do crazy walk in that?
He did it, whatever he did.
The crazy
I was just cracking up. I didn't know where he got that from, but he did it in all seriousness. Come to the Tiki Room for the magic show. People are like, where's the magic show? I'm like, oh no, I'm cracking up.
We talked about it in a couple of episodes ago about being blessed and getting to travel and go to all the other cities. So that was dope.
Now, let's transition a little bit of a serious note, because there was one episode, Frankie, where you mentioned that you kind of it was matter-of-factly, and then you went into your story.
Okay.
But you skipped around it, not on purpose. I'm just saying you just mentioned this. And you said Las Vegas might have been ahead of its time, even before Los Angeles. In terms of the dancing and hip-hop culture, sort of inviting the blend of ethnicities. It was when you were telling the story of somewhat J.C. Park and so on and so forth. And when that hip-hop and urban culture was still somewhat wholesome. Over the years, societal climate has suffered dramatically, but it's never taken a hit with what you two have done because of how it's presented and the people your events have attracted year after year. How have you made that stick 40 years later, even through everything that we've experienced, especially the last couple of years? It's never really infiltrated. None of the problems, none of the drama has infiltrated into anything that you guys are involved in.
It's a great question. And You know, I mentioned it when I first said it on this podcast that at JC Park the first week, it was very much the Magic Mix crowd, everybody who loved hip-hop and breakdance, and that's all it was. And then all of a sudden, the next week, you saw all the kids who were at the park, every culture, black, white, Asian, young, old, they were coming to the grass, the end of the grass, and then their feet were hitting the tar, and then before you know it, everybody was dancing together. And I think because of the JC Park scene that pulled people together who weren't ready to pay and go to a dance that we were doing at a hotel, or their parents didn't think it was safe if they were going to come to another event we were doing somewhere else, but at the park, they were already there. And I think that helped so great because everybody started melting together, black, white, young, old, it didn't matter. And I got emotional when I said it the first time. It just was an unbelievable way that everybody mixed together because they all had one thing in common, the music, and they all had dancing in common, and they all had just the whole vibe of that. And I believe that's one big reason why it lasted 40-something years with me and Rob, because those same people. I got a call today from Nola. You know, she was around back in those days. This is an event that me and Rob did in L.A., and it was fantastic, and I'm going to get into that in 1 second. Don't move that. But that's the reason I think we held the crowd together by our music and our consistent events. And the events that we do, believe me, they're not for the money. It's just for a gathering of getting us all together again and to remember when the world was great and when Vegas was great for us and when nightlife was fantastic and fun and no problems that you mentioned. No negativity, no derogatory happenings. It was just all fun. And that's why we do these events, because we were lucky enough to get this crowd together back then, and we still do it because we love it. This event we were so proud to be asked to do because it's the original poppers. You know, these are the original breakdancers and poppers from the movies that you've seen. As a matter of fact, the judges for this event, How the West Was Won, is people like Tony Basil and Boogaloo Shrimp, and who R.I.P. Whom I'm thinking about right now. Shabadoo.
Shabadoo, who just passed away.
Yeah, I just said R.I.P., Shabadoo. But these are the kind of judges that came to this. This is footage actually of the event. We have the music now. We're going to jump us off of, infringement on copyrights. But this is Ron.
I got it playing low.
Oh, okay. And it was great for so many reasons. First of all, to be under the same roof of all these original breakers and poppers. And this was in L.A. in one of the theaters there. And second of all, because the judges themselves were coming up and they made like Tony Basil do a little dance move. And she came up and said to me, there's a song, I don't know if you'll remember it, but it was like 1975, 76. It had a rock guitar in it. It was real fast, but we used to whack to it and dance to it. And do you know what I'm talking about? I said, I know exactly what you're talking about. You're talking about John Miles, Slow Down. And I put the earphone to her ear, and she was like, that's it. And she did her little number. And then also Poppin' Pete was there, and I forgot who wanted to dance to Ohio. And they get mad if somebody else dances to their song, Ohio, by the Ohio Players.
And in case anybody's not familiar, Tony Basil, of course, not only songwriter and singer, but Las Vegas High School graduate.
That's right. And Mickey, you're so fine.
And when she did that video, she wore her Las Vegas High School cheerleading outfit. I just think,
I'm glad you brought that up.
The natural following you two created had too much respect to cause problems at your events. And, speaking of which, from December 13th, 2002, there's a letter to the editor. Fantastic. I want to read.
This is a great one.
This is this was in City Life magazine, which was a weekly, and you could get around town. And this was this week's winner. At that time, this week's, and it's entitled
the best letter.
The editor put the best damn letter we received all week. I was an 11-year-old again on a recent Sunday night at Glow, watching DJ Frankie and R.O.B.s spinning the records that changed my youth and molded me into the man, father, husband I am this day. Thank you, Frankie and crew, for bringing hip-hop culture to the desert 20 years ago, during a time when it was innocent, fun, and exciting. It was a far cry from today's obsession with guns, drugs, status, and hoes in so-called rap music. It was all about the old school that Sunday night, the dancers of the days past represented on the floor with moves that still put goosebumps on my arms. And the music pumping through the speakers sounded as fresh and exciting as hearing it on KUNV 91.5 20 years ago. I once walked 2 hours to J.C. Park for Frankie and crew's educational Sunday hip-hop parties. Thanks for the memories and for the one night of bringing me back to my youth. Salvador Marino of Las Vegas. There's another one from Digital Tony, The Right Mix, 2002, celebrating 20 years of Vegas hip-hop magic. Frankie, you're here with the Kangol, some shades. It was 20 years ago today that Sgt. Pepper taught the band to play. Okay, so Sgt. Pepper had nothing to do with it, but it was 20 years ago that local favorites DJ Frankie and R.O.B. laid down the first hip-hop vinyl in Vegas. It seems like only yesterday that my older sister first made me listen to KCEP and a little show called Magic Mix. Magic Mix, which originally aired on UNLV's KUNV in November 1982, was the first radio program in the city that played this strange and exciting new music. Hosted by DJ Frankie and later with DJ R.O.B., Magic Mix was an instant hit, offering the Vegas Valley its first taste of Run DMC, the Sugar Hill Gang, Eric B., and even LL Cool J and the Beastie Boys. The intrepid DJs were key in bringing Vegas to the forefront of FM radio with this show. Soon after its debut, hip-hop dances and parties started appearing at hotels and local clubs like That's Entertainment. And I'll relay a personal story. So I came here in 1972, and I left briefly in 82. March of 82, came back in May of 85. During the time that I was gone was the peak of where that sort of what we're talking about, right? 81, Frankie introduces hip-hop. You two meet in 82, and then boom. I'll never forget the friends that I kept that I would pen pal with. Back then, there was no email, obviously. We were writing letters. And I would get cassette tapes in the mail. And I didn't know. Here I was, 1982, I was 13 years old. But I remember getting cassette tapes. And on those cassette tapes was the Magic Mix. So long after receiving these in the mail, because in Plantation, Florida, and Eden Prairie, Minnesota, there weren't Magic Mixes. There wasn't hip-hop. There was breakdancing, and I had gotten into breakdancing. But so it's just funny where we at, how we evolved as friends and co-workers. And, Frankie's credited with giving a lot of DJs in this town their first gig. My first official club, where I could say it was my club, I opened that club, was Fuddy Duddy's. Frankie and Rob ushered me in there. Frankie put a call into Gary Casio, and so on and so forth. So, the impact in the lives that you two have touched throughout, not just people that are showed up to dances and That's Entertainment and dance contests and nightclubs and Studio 54 and Rain, the impact on lives that you guys have had in teaching them the hip-hop culture and the love of music and how to appreciate goes far and beyond what a lot of people look forward to on August 20th. Now, one question I have to you: did either of you ever catch flack, or were you made to feel guilty as Italian Americans, somewhat overtaking by promoting an urban culture in Las Vegas?
You know what? Not really. We were welcomed with open arms. Everybody gave us respect. Everybody gave us props. As a matter of fact, the first or second podcast we did, we showed a excerpt from KCP, and it's the actual audio of an interview that Larry Weekly did with us on January 12th, 1991. And everybody gave us props. Not only all the jocks for... we started so many of them jocks, but even the people who called in gave us a lot of credit. There was a couple of times, just some small incidents, where I remember somebody said to me, some other DJ crew actually said to me, you guys made it harder for us. I'm like, you guys? What do you mean you guys? You, Rob, Hypo, you guys made it harder for us to do hotel dances or whatever. I was like, how can that be? We opened up the doors to that, number one. And number two, I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations with people running the show, whether they were presidents of hotels or managers of nightclubs, who I would say, we want to do this event. And they would say, is it going to be a roguish event? Is there going to be problems? I would say, absolutely not. These kids don't even smoke cigarettes, never mind drugs. And I'm telling you right now, the music is their main focus. And I knock on wood and knock on my head as wood to tell you how lucky we've been that our crowd was musically motivated. They were cultural. And I thank God for that. We are very blessed again to have that kind of crowd. And to keep them together for 40 plus years is amazing. It's amazing. And that's why we do these events. It's believe me, if we break even, we're lucky. But we do it because we feel part of a crew and part of, a certain community.
Yeah.
And I think that we feel like we owe it to the community to keep us together with at least one or two of these dances a year now.
And you know what's funny is you talk about, I just mentioned the impact that you had and the positivity and why you haven't caught so much flack. It's funny, in raising a son who's now 25 years old, an entrepreneur and a business owner of his own, but his friends that he went to high school with who have become DJs or tried to become a DJ and think that they're doing something with what they're doing. But, there are some that actually are successful. And we have a mutual friend who enjoyed a lot of those That's Your Entertainment part, whose daughter is getting a lot of gigs. And if you remember Davina, right? Yeah. Davina and Miguel, her daughter Jazz, DJ
I
Jazz.
booked her daughter once.
She is she's doing gigs out there. So I mean, awesome. There's a trickle down effect of the impact because the influence of her mom teaching her old school, some way or another, it's a trickle down effect. So now, Frankie, you had something to do with the first white rapper from Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
All right. Well, the first white rapper on a nationally distributed record label is Richard Scotti with a song called The Break. Now, for those of you who don't know, Richard Scotti was a DJ at Jubilation. And we became very friendly in 1980. And when he moved to town, he'll tell you the story the same way I'm about to tell it. He thought that he was the, only Italian guy from New York doing rapping and on the microphone. And they heard about me and Richie in the booth at Jubilation.
And we have a connection there.
Oh, absolutely. Willie's grandfather ran the place. His uncle was the owner, Paul Anka. And for those of you who didn't know that about Willie Will, now you know. His uncle is Paul Anka, the famous singer and songwriter. And Jubilation is one of his big songs. That's why he named the club that, Jubilation. And his grandfather actually ran the club. So I met with Andy a lot when we were doing promotions and stuff there. But Richie is here pictured in the DJ booth in 1980. It was the first DJ booth in the city that had monitors. I worked at the brewery. There was no monitors, which means a speaker that the DJ can hear the music real close and loud so he can mix properly. If there is no monitor, you got to learn that delay and make it flam on purpose in your earphones so it ends up being right on dance. It's very hard. But this first rap was because me and Richie, once we met, we both did raps. We ended up doing them together. And we did them with Hurt 'em Bad sometimes. So we would do raps, and I had a hook from the rap I would do, and it would be shake a rock, shake your boom, rock, rock around the room, shake a rock, shake your boom, rock, rock around the room. We give the next rapper time to know he's next on the mic and blah, blah, blah. So Richie used my hook for this record, and he also used my opening line, which was, by now I'm sure you've heard many rhymes, but now check out a white boy's lines. When I'm on the mic and I start to rhyme, I'm like, minute, rice perfect every time. Not the breaks, not rappers delight. It's what I call rapping white. They made him change it to rapping tight. And then all the rest of the words were his. And that was it. Became the first white rapper on vinyl, Radar Records. They had a couple of big hits. One was called Tony Lee Reach Up. And
well, there you go. And now you two produced your own record with drum machines long before producing guys like Dino, Gerardo, Biscuit, many others. Right, Rob, when you got picked up on a label to do some production, and Frankie, you two collabing on remixes, remind everybody about a little tune called Def Con.
Okay. First of all, Anyway, I had to listen to it. There's the German label right there. We
showed the label for couple of weeks ago. We teased it and we talked a little bit about it.
It's funny when the three of us were on the three-way the other night and I typed it in. I was like, and I was trying to put it on the speakerphone and Rob goes, "You spelled it with a K, right? You spelled it with a K." I said, "Dude, I got that. I know."
Well, this record originally came out on Macola Records, which is the label that Egyptian Love is on, and Rumors, Timex Social Club, and Ice-T. We were all on that label. And it was out of California. But once it got signed, it became so big. This record sold over 80,000 copies. It was signed in Spain, it was signed in Mexico, and it was signed in Germany. And I love this label, Clockwork. There's another song that we love on it called Nasty Rock that we would always play. So I was very happy to be affiliated with this label. Unfortunately, we never saw a penny for any of this. over 80,000 records sold. Now, I know Ice-T had problems with the label, and according to Egyptian Lover, he's the only one who made money with them. He's the only one who got paid. But the technical thing about this record, for those of you people out there who are into technical producing and stuff, you got to understand that this record used 3 different drums. It used the DMX drum machine, which was very popular, like on Ice-T stuff. A lot of people used the DMX. And then it used an 808, which was very popular out of the New York sound, High Noon and hip-hop
Planet
bebop.
Rock and stuff.
Yeah, Planet Rock, all used the 808. And then we used Simmons drums to do the fills. And me and Rob are both drummers, so we literally both played those fills. But this is what made this song so ironically hard to produce, and people didn't know how we did it. This is the actual drum machine. Way on the bottom is the 808.
That's my bedroom in 1985 when I started acquiring stuff.
Equipment.
I got the Oberheim DMX, the DX, the Roland 808, the Roland Juno 60, which we talked about a couple weeks ago,
Yeah.
a 4-track machine. But when we finally decided,
When we
we're gonna make
decided
a
to
record.
do this, I said, we got to do, let's use the 808 in this part, and then we do the DMX, and then Rob was like, they're not MIDI compatible. They don't lock up with each other. There's no way to connect them that they're gonna go
Talk
on
to
beat.
one
And I was
another,
like,
right.
yeah, well, so what are we gonna do? Can you mix it? And Rob said, I can, and I've played around with it, and I can do it. And Rob explained to me that even though 128 on one drum machine says it's 128 beats a minute, the other drum machine says 128. They still float slightly.
Every manufacturer has their own clock, and it could be fractions of milliseconds off.
Yeah.
If you started them together, one would be way behind in 2 minutes.
Sounds like 2 boots in the dryer.
So check this
Like
out.
many of my mixes back then.
That's the whole concept. That's how we synced these drum machines. Was we took it back to DJ style, where I actually had it queued up, and it was time for that drum machine to come into that phrase of the song. We muted the other tracks and opened up those tracks and recorded that live.
And he was doing plus minus to make sure that
One of our famous producer friends tripped out.
Dr. Dre, we talked about this story once before, but not this part of the story. When Dr. Dre was supposed to do a show in town with the Wrecking Crew, and they canceled it, we moved it to the roller skating rink the next day. It was supposed to be a Troubadour originally. We still had to go get the equipment out of the Troubadour that night to bring it over to the roller rink the next day. So me, Rob, and Dre were in there. We were having beers. We were talking. I already explained that Rob was mixing and cutting up, and so was Dre. And Dre had to really see that Rob was amazing, and he gave Rob all kinds of props. He was like, wow. He said, that was smoking, that was great, so on and so forth. And then he asked us about the record. He said, when you guys did the DEF CON record, because he did all the stuff with the Wrecking Crew, and we brought up all that stuff too, and he did his own stuff, surgery. He was doing surgery in his own production. So we were talking about music, but he said, how did you guys get the 2 drum machines? Was it an edit? Did you guys cut it and edit? And when I said no, he knew it. He said in one part you can hear that. This is how much he tuned in. He said you can hear the 808 drum hi-hat over the DMX. So it was either a sideways slice on an edit where you can hear 2 things for a second, or we explained to him how we did it. I said, no, Rob took the 2 drum machines and mixed them. He said, I was wondering if you guys did it DJ style. And we did. And it's ironic because the first mix down of that, we were actually going to go with one, and we all listened to it on cassette that night. And we were like, no, you can hear the switch. You can hear the switch on one of them on the 2 drum machines. So we did another take the next day, and it was perfect. And that's the one you guys hear on the record now. But I'm glad you asked that, because that's really hard to do what we did, and we were doing all that crazy stuff back then.
So you talk now. Pay attention here, Facebook people. They're talking about an era, the Troubadour. They're talking about the Rob said 1985. So any fans out there now, a lot of you old schoolers obviously appreciate this and already know this, but for a younger crowd or somebody that maybe that have caught on in the 90s and so on and so forth, right? So if you've watched the movie Straight Outta Compton and you know the history and you watch when they all came together, this is like at the beginning of Dre's, long before he mixed in with all those guys and became NWA. This was when he was, so back then, in reality, at any given time during the early days of Dr. Dre, in that movie, it was the same time was
well,
when they were intermingling.
I'm going to tell you
with
what,
these
if
two.
they showed you if that was a documentary rather than a movie, and they showed you the real labels on the wall, our label of Def Con would have been up there.
Right.
Because the 3 big records they had that year was the record that, of course, that they show in the movie, Straight Outta Compton, R.O.B.s, Timex Social Club, 1986, and Def Con. Yeah. They also had Stacy Q, 2 of Hearts. Those were their 4 big songs that year. And we would have been on that label rack.
And
we would have been on it.
And it became a nightclub hit because of the 808, obviously. And at the time, because of a nationally distribution, it was mixed many times with, I'm assuming, Paul Hardcastle's 19, correct?
Well, that tempo was slower. That was actually 120, and ours was 128. But it was mixed a lot with, of course, Egyptian Lover.
Okay.
It was mixed with Egyptian. It was mixed with Planet Rock. As a matter of fact, when they put out a promo for it, it said goes great with Planet Rock and Egyptian Lover.
Well, Frankie's doing a lot of the talking here. For Rob, we got to bring you into the. We got to bring
Frankie, he doesn't talk that much.
We got to bring you into the fray here.
I was a mute.
You showed some of the equipment. You went back to '85, and earlier in some of the shows, you talked about the band that you put together lately. I visited at Aliante. I watched some of that, but you touched on Sounds of the Sun. But what you didn't tell your listeners was about the woman who played a major role in your growth in music from those days at El Dorado. Can you maybe tell the followers, tell the people that are watching a little bit about Dr. Jensen?
Yeah, well, she is inspiration, and she inspired a ton of people in the class of, she was there from 76 till probably 90. I graduated in 84, but for my years of 81, 82, 83, 84, being in Sounds of the Sun was the first time I took a hobby or a musical interest and took it more serious. It was very disciplined. You had to be there a certain time. If we did shows in California, everybody had to be on time. You had to dress a certain part. I was already DJing, so I was producing the edits that the band would then practice. So I just got into this whole world of production and stage presence and entertaining and timing of the drums and dancing and
in a professional manner, not just playing.
And she was very strict. You couldn't clown around and do the fill wrong or start talking with your friend and chewing gum. It was very disciplined, but she made me take the music industry serious. I think I would have been flipping burgers, or my only real job I ever had was bussing tables at the El Rancho. I did that for a year so I could buy a Cadillac, but I was DJing at the time. But I probably just stayed in the service industry because I didn't know that hobby and that little tiny interest would turn into my career 35, 40 years later. So shout out to Dr. Jensen. I got a picture that you guys might appreciate. She came to one of our shows when I did the Funk All-Stars a couple of years ago. So here's a picture of me in Sounds of the Sun in 1982, and then when she came to one of our shows in 2018.
She aged better than you.
Hey. But she, when she did come to that show, we actually did a shout out because she got the key to the city a long time ago. Sounds of the Sun alumni, we made that happen. We called Susie Martinez, who was a congresswoman or a councilwoman. She ended up getting the key to the city, and we threw an event at the Bootlegger to honor her. But then when she came to see the band, I had to give her a shout out. I think I got a video of here right here. Check this out.
Right now, I'm going to throw it over to DJ R.O.B. We got a special guest in the house.
That's right. Check it out, Las Vegas. We have a special lady in the audience that we would like to recognize tonight. Her name is Dr. Jocelyn K. Jensen, and her career in music education spans 50 years. She has been a teacher and a mentor to a few of us here on stage tonight. From her inspiring music program, the Sounds of the Sun Pop Ensemble at El Dorado High School, and the founding director of the UNLV Women's Chorus, her teachings inspired students like myself to believe in themselves, pursue their love of music, and she has been instrumental in launching the professional music careers of many of her students. Not only is she recognized by us here tonight, but the mayor and the members of the Las Vegas City Council have proclaimed every February 19th as Dr. Jocelyn K. Jensen Day, right here in the city of Las Vegas. So Dr. Jensen, please stand up.
She is.
And Las Vegas, please make some noise for our inspirational mentor and teacher, Dr. Jocelyn K. Jensen. Can we get back to the funk? Let's get back to the funk, Keith.
So instead of me doing that whole spiel right now, I did it that night. So instead of me repeating it, she got her honors.
You get an idea of
she was very
of
emotional
who,
about it.
In reality, as I just mentioned a little bit ago, Frankie gave us all our first start and you've heard the stories in the first 3 episodes where Rob reached out to him and said, "Hey, I gotta get with this guy. Hey, I'm from New York and I'm a drummer and so on and so forth." You get an idea from that video how special this woman was. And for all of you that have enjoyed how many years? 40 years of entertainment from DJ R.O.B., a lot of that has to do with Dr. Jensen. And Rob, I got a personal story to tell you. In using the phrase, she taught you to take things serious. Mm-hmm. I will never forget the first time. Like, Rob and I were always cool. The dance contest, the Tramps, then Sharks, so on and so forth. But on a personal level, in becoming close with these guys, Frankie entrusted me. He's like, "Wow, you really know, the wedding stuff, the doing the mobile and getting on the mic." And he entrusted me with this small. He called it his little coffin, and it was 2 little speakers. And so one day we were at the old house over by Gorman, and we were in the room, and we were just talking, and I don't know what I said to sort of trigger this, but I had just mentioned, at some point I hadn't been to Fuddy Duddy's yet, so I wanted my break, and Rob kind of got in my ass, and he said, the thing is, Willie, is you just want to jump ahead and be part of everything that we put in years of this. And you like the hype of being a DJ and being called Willie Will and the dancing. And yeah, you put in your time in the contest and you establish yourself as a dancer, but you don't practice. You don't sit at home for hours and mix. You just grab the coffin and the crates and you go and do it. And then you say, "I'm a DJ." But you haven't taken it serious yet. And I'll never forget that conversation. And it was somewhat of a transitional point for me where I needed to start understanding getting the record pool records and actually going on my off day and listening to each one and marking the labels. Back then when we were marking vinyl labels and growing into being a club DJ and somewhat being a little more respected in throwing an event or being invited to an event to DJ, not just being a wedding DJ, which is a lot different. You don't need to mix on beat. You can fade one in, fade one out. It's more about being a wedding DJ is more about being an MC. And I had comfortability being on the mic, but that day I'll never forget. I'll never forget where we were in Frankie's room where he had that coffin set up against the wall right next to the door. And eventually when I guess it probably was one of those speeches where it bled over to my journalism career and where, I started taking things serious. I got out of the night scene and wanted to be a journalist and started taking being a journalist a lot more serious. And here we are, where I'm at now and 34 years later, and I'm an accomplished sports writer. But on that note, in terms of taking things serious, I'll never forget that.
Well, I wasn't trying to diss. I was just probably instilling the things that were instilled in me.
Right,
and I talked to a lot of DJs and say, "Hey, man, do this right and you'll go far." We're exactly 1 hour in from the live stream. So what is it time for?
It's time to take a word from our sponsor. And we want you to check this out.
Backed by popular demand, the old school Las Vegas reunion returns with Reunion 2021 with a fresh new venue, Rockstar Bar. Brought to you by the legendary duo of DJ Frankie and R.O.B.s. Friday, August 20th at 6730 South Las Vegas Boulevard across from Town Square, 9 p.m. to 2 a.m.
This is how we do it.
Pre-sale tickets only $10 on Eventbrite or at the door before 10 p.m. Indoor-outdoor dance party with food and drink specials and the lowest bottle prices on the Strip. Reunion 2021, Friday, August 20th at Rockstar Bar. See you there.
Yeah.
This event is going to be so great. This is a brand new location. $10 pre-sale tickets, $15 at the door. It's also 10 before 10, free ample parking. But the best thing about that, after seeing this little spot that you just played and after hearing what we were talking about today with Willie, there's no corporate crunch here. We never brought that up before. There's no corporate crunch. When the corporates loved what me and Rob were doing and they let us run the show and they believed everything we directed them to do, it was great. Then all of a sudden they thought they knew things better and things changed. But this event is going to show you exactly how it was in the old days, from Plainland Roller Skating Rink to That's Entertainment to Shark Club and to Tramps, of course, and Studio and Rain in the early years of Studio and Rain. It's going to be that feel, and those people are coming. So you got to be to this event. It's great. Go ahead,
and
Will.
you know what? You once spoke about going against the grain. And earlier in the show, talked a little bit when I asked you if you were made to feel guilty as Italian Americans. So you never caught really flack, but when it came to the corporate and the owners and the managers, in terms of what they wanted, they would come in and say, do this, but you knew that your direction was best. What we saw at the turn of the century is after originally being respected for your skills on the wheels, you both began being recognized and getting hired as musical directors, overseeing much more than spinning vinyl. Can both of you touch on that, or you have an experience or a perfect example for us?
Okay, well, we've got involved in promotions. I actually had the management team over at MGM, from the bottle hosts to the street teams to so on and so forth. And Rob did the same thing over there at Rain. But even before we became in charge, there was a lot of executives who would listen to us and say, we want to do what these guys are saying. It makes sense. They got more experience than us. But after a while, like I said on this show today, they think they know better than you because of this guy who used to be a host or this guy who used to be a bartender. It doesn't matter. But one specific incident, there's so many, but one specific one was at Eve, and that was Eva Longoria's Nightclub, for those of you who don't know. And that's why I don't like spinning for certain people, because I know that they yell at the DJ, don't play this, don't play that. And I could never do that. I'm very confident in my programming, and I don't want to get into an argument and have a stroke over it. But this particular story was Rob spinning at Eve.
This was the grand opening, and it was all the Latin investors, all her partners, investors, and friends and family. The manager was Stevie D. Shout out to Stevie D, but in this particular instance, he was wrong. But I said, this looks like it's going to be a nice Latin vibe. I should do some Latin. I knew a lot of Latin music, so I had it. Maybe we should do some Latin music. Because, just stick with the top 40. I don't want to plagiarize or whatever his reasoning was. But the parties, they're passing hors d'oeuvres, there's champagne, a lot of big wigs, a lot of several celebrities. She was on that show, and so some of the other stars were there. But it just wasn't going anywhere. Yeah. They finished drinking, they finished eating, and I said, this is nonsense. So I played a couple hot Latin songs. As soon as 10 seconds of that first Latin song came on, everybody rushed to the dance floor. And I kind of said, look. Next thing you know, Eva Longoria runs up to the DJ booth. She opens the door. She gives me a big hug. She says, I love you right now. This is perfect. This is great. So I'm giving her this hug. I remember she was really tiny. And as she's saying, thank you, thank you, thank you, I'm looking at Stevie D, and I'm going, see, I know what I'm doing. And this is tiny stories of this happened all the time.
You have to prove them all the time.
In the later years, they started not respecting us as far as curation or music direction. It got kind of weird.
Yeah, it changed. It definitely changed. And like he said, that's just one story of thousands. I used to say at MGM all the time, you want to make a bet, and I would prove, what worked and what didn't. But at first, they listened to us, and then they thought they knew better. So that's one big reason why we do the events that we do now, like the reunion event. We're doing reunion because it takes it back to the old school, back to the old way, and with everybody who's been together for 30 plus years, and it's going to be a great event. So,
and Robbie, when things reached a point you were done dealing with managers and done dealing with owners, you started creating your own old school promotions, as Frankie just said, like we're anticipating on August 20th. Around town, until you found a place that actually remained loyal to your events, and it stuck, but it was still your promotion.
Yeah, well, I was doing a few things right after Rain 2010. I said, I'm going to start going back and doing my own promotion. So I started doing Facebook parties, which is all I did was created the event on Facebook, and I started doing that bootlegger. And I was already doing the pool parties out at Silverton, and shout out to Tanya Morgan, who I knew back in the production show days, and from MGM. She said, do you think you can do something cool in our Vail Pavilion, which is their big
showroom type
ballroom
thing.
venue, whatever. And we started doing old school nights there. We actually did our old school reunion 30 year.
I'm going to go through that
at Silverton, but we'll go from there in a minute. But I started doing the old school parties because I was doing the mix shows with the old school station, which was Oasis, that turned into old school 105.7, which then turned to Jammin' 105.7. So they allowed me to music direct and curate, book the bands, consult on the bands that they should book. We brought Confunction, Ohio Players, Zap, Lakeside, even the local bands that were hot at the time, which was one of the excuses I used to create my Funk All-Stars, because I knew I could get them to open. So that was a successful 4 or 5 year run, packed to the gills. And from that point on, we just kept doing our own promotions and continuing with the reunion parties.
Well, I wanted to bring up something on the reunions. Everybody's like, when did this reunion happen? When did that happen? So quickly, I'm just going to go by. The first reunion was approximately the first 10-year reunion of the Magic Mix days and all that was at Fuddy Duddy's, and it was in 91. That was the first one. The second one was a 20-year reunion at Glow in 2002. And then we did Taboo, and it was just 22 years later, but we said we got to start doing these a little more often. We're getting older here, and we got to start squeezing a few more of these in.
That's crazy. Flyers from 91, and it was celebrating the Magic Reunion. So we didn't remember that we did one way back when.
Right. Yeah. We saw this flyer recently for this show, and we were like, look at that. That was the first reunion.
So this year's 38th reunion is actually the 30-year reunion of the first reunion.
He's getting complicated.
Yeah. And that's why this reunion is called Reunion 2020, because we're getting old and we're losing count. It's like, let's just call it Reunion 2021 for several reasons. 2020 sucked, and we were hoping 2021 will be better. And it's 37, 38, 39, so 41 and a half.
And we're hoping to do 2 or 3 a year. We'll do a Halloween one. We'll do a New Year's if we can. We'll do at least 2 a year. So that's what we're hoping for. Then, anyway, the one after 2004 at Taboo was at Salisbury. It was on Industrial.
That's that one right there.
Right. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is people can say, oh, I've been to that one. I forgot. I was there. The next one was the 30-year reunion at Silverton, which we did too, because the Silverton was so happy with the turnout. And then, there it is again, Silverton. And then after that, we did the Beauty Bar, which was the 35-year reunion. And that was, just a few years ago. That was
that the one where at your house you had the guy on the side of the house with the big sheet doing the painting?
Yeah, that was Place on 7th is when we did.
No, that was the one last year. Right, you're right. You are right. So the Beauty Bar was not the one with the graffiti one. That was the 35-year anniversary Beauty Bar. It's in the commercial that we play now. And then the last one we did was Place on 7th downtown. Huge place. It was so big. The outside was so big and everything. It even made us our crowd sparse because it was such a big place. And now this one is at Rockstar Bar. And I don't know if you want to do it again because, we're almost out. But the next one is at Rockstar Bar, Friday, August 20th, 9 p.m. till 2 a.m. $10 in advance, $10 if you're there before 10, 15 after that. Then I want to remind you guys, we are lucky to break even at these events. It's just for everybody to get together. The place owns the bar. The place gets the tables. So keep that in mind.
Well, you know what? This has been an absolute blast. And I think the one thing that I have to say is that even though you two have evolved with the town, with many of the accomplishments that we've seen both of you do individually and together, and grew in stature like the Las Vegas nightlife scene, the one thing that you've never done, and I think that all of us old school Las Vegans appreciate and we've learned in terms of loyalty, is that you've never abandoned the reunions and events that always kept the old school community and family together. So for me, I thank you. But I mean, it's something that you've just, like you said, you never really turned your back on. You've never tried to do anything to make money off of people. It's more so if you obviously want to break even, but it's in terms of keeping what I feel to you guys, you feel is your family. The That's Entertainment family, the J.C. Park family, the Tramps family, the Mr. G's family. It's an old school community that will never die in Las Vegas, and that DJs that have never met you owe a lot to you. And I think that's something special. And I think that's why after what we experienced in the last 16 months, that this is an event that might be, as I said, the best one yet. In terms of just a lot of people appreciating, we've lost some people along the way. I'm not sure how many of you out there in Facebook land have actually lost somebody, but due to this. But the bottom line is that this is something that if there's one reunion you need to be at, it's August 20th.
Thank you, and I agree with everything that you said.
And happy birthday to Hypo Scott. He finally joined us.
Oh, yeah. Hypo Scott, one of my original partners there. And Rob was with us in the crew at that time as well. But it was me and Hypo And then Rob came right in, and we also had Street Beat before it was just me and Rob. But Hypo and Richard Scotti, they deserve credit for being there a long time ago. But it was me and Rob who did most of my whole career together. If I've been doing it for 43 years, it was only 3 years with Hypo and Richie before Rob, and then it was 40 years after that. It was just me and Rob.
Well, we're only
Rob,
48. We met each other when we were 5 years old. So.
Right, of course.
I was
Anyhow.
6. I was 6. But I just want to mention one quick thing. In 1982, the Magic Mix premiered on 91.5. In 1983, we did J.C. Park, and we also did Lipstick with a breakdance show. Now, the reason why I bring
We showed all that footage.
but the reason why I bring this up is breakdancing in the hip-hop culture wasn't exposed to the whole world through books and movies till 1984.
That's right.
It was 1984, the big breakdance year of letting everybody know what was
Breaking
happening.
movie came out.
Yeah. Also the one in New York, Beach Street. But and then that was in 84. But we were doing this 2 years prior to that. 2 years prior. And I just want to put that in the books or put it out there in the airways just to let it be known that we helped bring that in, and we're not even a major city. You know, it's not New York or L.A., and I think that we were ahead of a few of those. That's all I want to
I'd
say.
beg to differ that in terms of the word helped, you know, I've written the stories. I've made sure that I chronicled it. And as I said in crediting you guys, and I'm not looking for a pat on the back, but in terms of always giving back, is when I became a journalist, the one thing that I always wanted to make sure that I did, just like when I started my career with the Black newspaper, every February when I was at the View newspapers, I told the editor, hey, I want to do, for Black History Month, I want to do old high school athletes and give a shout out to them. But at the same token, with you guys, I wanted to be able to tell your stories. There's no helping ushering in that era. You guys were that era. Frankie, you are credited with introducing and ushering hip-hop into this town. And 1 year later, Rob, I mean, becoming realistically, all due respect, Frankie, but you even mentioned it on one of the shows, the tricks that he was doing. Rob, I don't care who you are and how much money you charge for a residency, Rob will go down as the greatest mixologist to ever. Here's the perfect example I can give you. Everybody loves LeBron James. Everybody loves Kevin Durant. Everybody loves Russell Westbrook. Everybody loves today's NBA players. There will never be another Michael Jordan. There will never be another DJ Rob. There will never be another DJ Frankie. You can do all that you want to duplicate in this town, but there will never be another one of these two, the originators in Las Vegas. And that is the bottom line.
Thanks a lot. I gotta
Thanks. I got your cash. I got your cash downstairs for the shout out and the
Pat him on
props.
the back. Here we go. There's
Well,
that cat.
you know, this happens when you bring a journalist aboard.
So this is where we're going to button it up. An hour and 15-minute live stream. We're going to throw that commercial one more time just to get you excited, hopefully. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching episode 1, 2, 3, and 4. We're skipping next Friday as far as the live stream goes because we're going to be setting up at the Rockstar Bar. So thanks, Willie, for moderating and asking some intriguing questions and keeping a different kind of show flow going. Thanks, Frankie, for being my guest for 4 weeks in a row. Check this out. My next guest will be, drumroll, Dino. So everybody knows Dino from his Summer Girls, and
I like it.
You might not know some of his current projects where he's producing jazz artists, and we keep in touch all the time. But
And I still think his best song never made it on an LP was Nighttime Love Kind, but go ahead.
yeah. So we're going to talk about all that. So this is a major artist that came out of Vegas that I helped with production, helped do his shows. We traveled all over the place, opened up for New Kids on the Block. I got footage. We've got stories. That's going to come up in a few weeks or a couple weeks. But once again, thanks for checking in. We're going to go to the commercial, and we hope to see you next Friday. This Friday now, August 20th, Rockstar Bar. Peep the commercial. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you next time.
Backed by popular demand, the old school Las Vegas reunion returns with Reunion 2021 with a fresh new venue, Rockstar Bar. Brought to you by the legendary duo of DJ Frankie and R.O.B.s. Friday, August 20th at 6730 South Las Vegas Boulevard across from Town Square. 9 p.m. to 2 a.m.
This is how we do it.
Pre-sale tickets only $10 on Eventbrite or at the door before 10 p.m. Indoor-outdoor dance party with food and drink specials and the lowest bottle prices on the Strip. Reunion 2021, Friday, August 20th at Rockstar Bar. See you there.